Ministers are thought to have broadly agreed that the government should increase the Brexit divorce offer to the EU. But in return, they want Brussels to move on to trade talks next month. Theresa May has been holding a meeting of her senior team. Zimbabwe's ruling party says it will start impeachment proceedings against President Mugabe tomorrow. Members of ZANU-PF have been meeting to discuss his future after he refused to stand down. Our senior Africa correspondent is Anne Soy.
This is a tricky process because they need to mobilise at least 2/3 of both houses of parliament for the vote to pass. And experts say that this is really a make or break for the party because it has to pass. If it doesn't, it will only embolden Mr. Mugabe.
The German Chancellor Angela Merkel says she'd prefer to fight a fresh election than lead a minority government. Talks to form a coalition have collapsed after 8 weeks of negotiations. Gerry Adams has told the BBC he wants to be part of a process of reconciliation. He's stepping down as Sinn Féin leader next year. Mr Adams defended the IRA campaign, calling it a legitimate response to oppression. People with British Gas are being urged to come off their standard variable rate tariffs. The firm is scrapping the scheme to new customers. The rates can often be more expensive. Claire Osborne is from Uswitch.
It does go a long way to addressing an issue that is really prevalent in the market, which is that about 60% of customers are sitting on those expensive standard variable tariffs, more than £300 more than the cheapest deal in the market. So that's a good move to getting people onto a better deal. But we really need to see how that plays out.
British Airways is going to start changing the way it allows passengers onto their planes. It's introducing a new system, so the cheapest seats will be called to board last. The new rules from next month will see first-class travellers get on first.
BBC Three.
Boy.
Life with no filter.
Coming out is scary enough without it being to your Muslim dad.
Always honest.
Harming myself seemed the most obvious way to deal with it.
Always original.
America, a country that's become increasingly plagued by gun violence.
Always open. BBC Three. Available on BBC iPlayer.
That's a magic number. Yes, it is. It's the magic number.
What does it all mean?
Hello and welcome to Flintoff, Savage and the Ping Pong Guy. That's me, Matthew Syed. Another set of meaty topics. First, we're going to discuss pressure and preparing for a massive sporting event. Then we're going to ask if we could travel back in time to any historical event, what would it be? Remember, you can use the hashtag FredSavSide to get in touch with future topics. But let's start with the Ashes. It starts in Australia this week. England have already suffered some injuries. They've been taken to see alligators. Today we're going to talk about preparation for a big sporting series or match. What are the good and bad examples of how you get in the best frame of mind to perform? And remember, for the Ashes, it's a long tour. You're away from home. Freddie, you've played in the Ashes. You've won the Ashes. What's your sort of take on what constitutes great preparation? Can it go over the top sometimes? How would you go?
I think it's finding that balance. You both know that preparation to anything is key. Preparation is the one thing that gives you confidence going into a series, going into a match. If you turn up to something knowing that you've done everything you possibly can to perform in that game, in that series, gives you that extra edge. There's nothing worse, and I've been on both sides of it, where I've turned up for matches, for series, knowing that I've not really put the hard yards in, and you've got to wing it a little bit. But the Ashes is different. You get on that plane, the attention around it is so much greater than any other series in which you play.
How long before you get on the plane is your thinking directed at the Ashes? Is it 6 months out? Is it a year out? When do you start to think about that's where it's going to come?
Do you know what? I think the Ashes is always on your mind. Because firstly, even during the summer, you want to be in the Ashes squad. So although you're playing for England, you're making sure you do well to win, but also be on that plane for the winter. My experience of it was slightly different. I was coming back from injury, so my rush was to be fit. And you talk about bad preparation, and through no fault of my own, because I did everything I needed to do, I turned up fit, but not match fit, having played any cricket. And I was captain, I got there, and I wasn't sure what type of form I was in, how fast I was going to bowl, how it was all going to go, because I'd not really done anything. And from leaving on the plane, it's just a completely different kettle of fish to anywhere else you go. It's what everyone's talking about. It's what in the newspapers. It's in the news. You land at the other side. Everyone knows you're arriving. Even the customs guys, as you get to Australia, are on you straight away.
Yep.
They're making it difficult for you, even to get through. And you come out the other side, there's the TV cameras. Everyone, as you walk out, they might be waiting for someone they've not seen for 20 years with a banner, but they'll still tell you to F off. It's like it don't matter. And then even on the streets, everyone's letting you know, everyone's telling you how bad you are, how you're going to get beat, this, that, and the other. And they're just on you constantly. So if you've not prepared and done everything you possibly can, you will start to think these things. And the team in which I captained and played, I think were almost beat before we got there.
Yeah.
Because we couldn't compete with this side. We didn't know what to expect. But I think it'd be different for these lads.
So, you know the warm-up games? So when you land, you have the warm-up games before the first test. How important are those games? As you say, can you play your way into form? Or would the selection, you'd know the starting 11. Can you play your way into an Ashes starting 11 for the first test in those warm-up games? Or are they just get your form?
You almost want to turn up fit and confident, but slightly undercooked.
Right.
You don't want to be peaking in them first few games, but you still want to be in a position where you're going to improve over the first 3 weeks of the tour, going into the first test. But we play against the President's 11 or the Prime Minister's 11, and it's a mixture of good players and retired players.
Yeah. We
got beat by 250 runs.
Really?
We just got hammered. And then from that, it didn't get any better.
Yeah.
And you turn up for the first test match, and... it was awful.
But is your mindset in those games, those warm-up, don't get injured? So would you be steaming in under 90 mile an hour, or would you be thinking, got the first test in 3 weeks, I've got to just maybe hold back a little bit here?
My problem was, if I held back, especially as a bowler, I was no good.
Right.
I couldn't. I was either all in or nothing.
Yeah.
I wasn't like a skillful bowler like a Jimmy Anderson who swung it, who could just ease back and rely on swing. I had to be all out every time. And that's the thing where I got injured a few times. Because if I ran in and just eased back, I didn't know where it was going.
Yeah.
Everything had to be going in one direction, full on. So, yeah. And I wanted to make an impact on the tour as well. Right. And then you're playing against lads who, some of them have got aspirations of playing for Australia. Some of them make a name for themselves. So sometimes the warm-up games are a bit feistier than the actual Ashes.
Can the preparation ever be over the top? So I'm thinking about the England team going out for a tour, not just with a psychologist and a batting coach and a fielding coach, but also a nutritionist, a toenail cutter.
Oh, there's all sorts.
Right, now, does it sometimes happen that they're so focused on getting performance high that it starts cluttering your mind? It's over-prescriptive. You want to play with freedom, you want to be able to play with your own personality, but when you've got all these different people telling you what to do, can that be a problem?
The only thing I didn't like about that was you look at the start of my career to when I finished, you look at a team photograph and it got bigger and bigger and bigger because there's more and more people coming on tour. Yeah. And I like my own time. I like my time off. I didn't want to go for a massage every night. I didn't then want to go and speak to someone else or go and do something else or fill a form in or check what I'm eating. I like my downtime.
Yeah.
But I suppose it's each to their own.
Right. Some people like that, but others need to have a bit more space.
I don't want a computer analyst. I don't want to go and watch. I don't want to go and dissect my technique.
Interesting.
I'm more of a field player as opposed to a visual. And I know myself. I don't need someone to tell me. Yeah. But these lads now on the Australia trip, the hardest thing for them is going out there and just playing. Just have that no fear of failure. You talk about pressure. The only pressure that can affect you is the one you put on yourself. You can't affect the outside world. You can't affect the press. You can't affect the public. You still got to keep that clear mind and believe in what you do, what you've done, and the reason you're there in the first place.
So the first test is at the Gabba, is it?
Yeah.
The Gabba. So the hotel, the night before, 2 days before, when do you have the team meetings? Do they get shorter? Do they get longer? You know, what is that?
I hated team meetings.
That's me too.
Did different coaches conduct the team meetings in different ways?
Yeah, I don't know what they're like now, and I can't really speak, but some that I was in, you go in, right, and then you start talking about the opposition, and then you're playing against a good side. I don't need to talk about them. You know, I know Ricky Ponting's brilliant. I know what he can do. I know what he can't do. And then they talk about where you bowl at him, or you bowl here and you do this and that. My good ball is a good ball.
Yeah.
I try and bowl my best ball every ball.
Yeah.
You know, whoever it may be, it don't matter. If it's a bad ball, I'll get belted. And then they put videos up. And then you see Ricky Ponting scoring all these runs and you're thinking, where am I going to bowl at him? And then you talk so much about the opposition. You talk about where they can score, what they do, all the strengths, if they've got some possible weakness or something you can exploit. If I was a coach, I'd go the other way. I'd talk about us. I'd get to know my own teammates. You know, we talk about other people's weaknesses.
Yeah.
Let's talk about, for instance, like, I'm only just mentioning his name because he's my mate. Steve Armisen, tell me about you.
Yeah.
Tell me about what I've got to look for in you. I know when you're doing well. I know when it's all going good. Give me some tells. If you're struggling a little bit, let me speak. Let me and the team, let's identify it and help you rather than I know more about Ricky Ponting.
It's really interesting because if you were to become the England coach, that would be quite a big transformation in the way that team meetings are conducted. Is there anything else that you would do differently if you were running the Ashes now as head coach of England? Would you be getting to the ground earlier? Would you get there later? Would you have less support staff? Would you do well, you probably wouldn't have motivational. What speeches? Yeah, how would the build-up games? What sort of differences do you think you would make given the experiences you've had?
I think the hardest thing with the build-up games now is when you go on an Ashes tour, there's games in which you have to play. It's tradition that you play against the Prime Minister's 11. Just logistically, you'll go and play a warm-up game in Adelaide or you might play one somewhere else. So it's all set in stone. I think what's happening now more and more is they're taking guidance from the players. I think as a coach, you're providing what the players need. As a coach, you're not going out there and playing. You're a facilitator. You've got to make them players feel the best they need. So before the tour starts, I think that's when the meetings are most crucial. A month out, 6 weeks out. What do we need in preparation for this tour? What do you individually need?
Yeah.
And the hardest thing about that is from a playing point of view, is if you're going to tell a coach that, then you're going to give away a few weaknesses.
Yeah.
And you've got to be confident enough in your own ability and have the trust of the coach to feel this is what I need. Yeah. This is an area in my game I struggle with. This is mentally something I struggle with. Can you help me? So I think trust plays a massive part.
Is the heat a factor? The heat?
Not really.
Not really at all.
For the first few days, it's hot. And then you sweat. I've never struggled with it. You just get hot, don't you? Lose a bit of weight.
So what do you think of this series then? What do you think? You know, do you think England are favourites? Do you think...
I don't think they're favourites.
No?
I think England win, though.
Do you think they win?
I think England win 3-2.
3-2?
I'm not quite as bullish. I was saying, they could win 4-1. I think the big thing about... I'm going to contradict myself here. The big thing about Australia is you want to start well. Because all that pressure that is on you can quickly turn on them. If Australia start getting beat, you're getting taxis and things, and the taxi drivers will start slagging the Aussies off. The public will start slagging the Aussies. The press will do it. It's brilliant. But I don't think we'll start well.
Because it's at the Gabba?
The Gabba suggests that Australia do well there.
Yeah.
I think we'll lose at the Gabba, and all the pressure will be on.
Is it a fast pitch?
It's a fast, bouncy pitch.
Mitchell Stark,
he's going to be a handful on there. Handful. We'll lose at the Gabba. We'll win in Adelaide. Day-night game, pink ball, going to swing around Jimmy Anderson.
That'll suit England.
Yeah. And then we will get beat in Perth.
Red hot,
fast and bouncy. Although it's a new stadium. Then we'll win in Melbourne and Sydney, 3-2.
3-2.
There you go.
Yeah, Rob, just going back to preparation, it strikes me that the Premier League, the matches are coming so thick and fast. You don't have a great deal of time to think strategically about what you want to do to maximise performance. But pre-season, you have a bit of time. You have a break, you go on holiday. Yeah. But then you go on these tours to Asia and all over the place. Do you think the preparation for Premier League players is as good as it could be?
Yeah, I think so. I love pre-season.
Talk through pre-season. What would you do to build up and be absolutely fit and sharp on the opening day?
But I don't think you build up now because for me, I think in this modern times, you have to you can't have 6 weeks off. So for me, I would go on holiday and I would train every single day on the beach. Really? I would be. So I would never get a rest. I would obviously tone it down a little bit, but I would keep myself physically fit, do running on the sand. So I would go back as sharp as I was, not sharp, as fit as I was. You know, so that would be my thing. But in terms of preparation for Premier League games, so basically you do a bit on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I would know who my opponent was, obviously, in the weeks I watch so much football. I'd maybe watch a clip on him, which I'd know him anyway. You know, what's he good at, what's he not so good at. Thursday, I would go out for something to eat. Every week, that was my preparation. Friday, I would sleep in downstairs, away from my wife and my family on my own.
Is that her choice or yours? I don't know.
It's my choice and my choice. So 9 o'clock every Friday, I'd be in bed at home. I would get up at 9 o'clock. I'd have a fry up. I'd drive to the ground on my own. You know, but I'd have to go on my own. My wife and kids
was that your choice, or nobody come with you?
My choice again. That would get.
Hang on, but a fry up is that
fry up? Yeah,
thing,
that was my. That was.
I had a bacon butter every morning.
Fry up. You know, people say I've pasta or whatever. I had a fry up. Well, at home games, I then get to the ground. Be the first at the ground. I'd have a hot bath, and I was one of these type of players. If the gaffer would have said to me, "Go out 5 to 3, don't warm up," I could have done that easily because I don't get, and there will be a scientific reason behind it. You go out onto the pitch at 2 to warm up. You go back in at 2:45. You're sitting down then for 10 minutes, and you go out and at 100 mile an hour. What is the benefit of a warm up? I'm sure we can do that on another podcast. What is the benefits of warming up? Because you're out. So, listen, December, it's going to be cold. You go out at 2:20. You run round. You kick balls. Then you go. You've got a sweat on. You go back in. You sit down for 10 minutes.
No, put the eating on.
What?
The eating not on.
Yeah, but you're going to be...
You go and sit down for 10 minutes after the warm-up before going out to play. Well, that is ridiculous.
But there might be a scientific reason why that happens. I'd like somebody on the hashtag #FredSavSyed, they tell us why is a warm-up so good if you do it for 25 minutes, but then go and sit down for 10 to 15 minutes before you kick off at 3 o'clock at 100 mile an hour.
What we would do is 45 minutes before the match started, we'd go and warm up on the match table. So you're getting used to the light, the feel of the table, so you can take that out. You get your shots going, so you feel comfortable in what you're doing. But then I'd always make sure that I stayed active so that my body was still warm, put the tracksuit on, and You would let your muscles get cold because otherwise you get a niggle, don't you?
I'd go out for team time.
Team time
for warm up.
Yeah,
a bit first in. I hated it, and then I'd go and have a coffee, bacon butty, sit down for a bit, and then.
Could you have gone?
I always like 40 minutes before kick-off, before we started, to myself, to have a brew and watch a bit of telly.
Just to get your mind completely away from the intensity, the pressure of it all.
I'd love to say it was that. It was just I liked it. And then I'd go out and do my bit. Like before I batted. I probably should have warmed up before I batted. I'd just sit there on me. I'd just sit there and have a brew. And then...
So just walk out?
Yeah. Well,
that's unbelievable.
No, because what happened is, say if I was batting at 6, then after 4 wickets down... Is that right? Yeah, I'm in at 4 wickets. So I'd be in my pants till 3 wickets down, and then I'd have a mad rush to get my kit on. I'd sit there, maybe swig a Red Bull and a cup of coffee, and then if a wicket drops, I put my brew down, swing my arms around and go and walk out.
That's it.
What about if you're opening the bowling?
If I was opening the bowling... I put my brew down, swing my arms around and go and have a bowl.
That's amazing. That's so interesting.
So interesting.
When it comes to the pressure of the Ashes, you talked already that the pressure's intense. You get there, the customs officers, people walking down the street, the press, the media, the attention.
I've experienced both sides of it.
Yeah.
2005 was brilliant. After the first Test match, when I bottled it, I really did bottle it in the first Test match, and I thought I'm never going to do that again, and I'm just going to enjoy it. And then in that, it was just like the crest of a wave. The worst thing about that series was it ended.
Oh,
we won it and it was brilliant and I loved it, but I wanted another game the next week. I was enjoying it that much.
Is there more pressure for an England cricketer playing in Australia or playing at home?
It's a good question. I think at home there's more scrutiny, obviously from the English press and the English media. But then I suppose the holy grail for any cricketer is to win in Australia. So I think from that respect, the pressure you put on yourself is probably greater out in Australia. Like you look at Jimmy Anderson at the minute, England's best ever bowler, international, great now. But the final piece in the jigsaw for him to becoming amazing is to perform well and win well in Australia, which he hasn't done.
Yep.
So there's different kinds of pressures on all different people. Jimmy will be desperate to do well over there. I would love to have done well in Australia. So the pressure's slightly different.
Who was the Australian player who made you feel the most anxious? Somebody who was out there on the field and you knew that person was going to niggle you, is going to find your weaknesses.
It wasn't so much niggling. I don't care what they say, or I don't care people coming at me. The one bowler who made me feel inadequate was Glenn McGrath.
I knew you were going to say that.
Glenn McGrath. Like Shane Warne was,
what a player.
Shane Warne was brilliant. He'd put it on a length, but let's be honest, he's a spinner. Brett Lee was quick, but he was nice to bat against. Glenn McGrath, he just bowled it where I couldn't hit it.
Really?
The accuracy is incredible.
It's horrible. You know when you're batting against someone and it hits your bat, you're quite relieved.
Yeah,
it shouldn't be like that. It should be, I'm hitting this. Most bowlers I batted against, I'm hitting it. I'm going at it. I'm hitting it. But with Glenn, it was, thank God it hit me back, that one.
Did you ever get the better of him?
For brief moments, yeah. For brief moments. I remember because only when he started sledging, because he was the world's worst I've ever. It was like he had Tourette's, and I don't think he'll mind me saying he's not the brightest, Glenn. And he just used to shout at you.
What would he say?
He just like expletives.
Really?
Yeah, and he'd question you, and then you went back at him, and he didn't know what to do. It was like he scrambled his computer, and he'd look around the team for someone to help him. It's like, jog on, Glenn.
So people who don't know. So people who don't know about cricket. So you talk about Glenn McGrath, Fred, and when I went to see my first cricket match, I was amazed how far the wicketkeeper stands back.
Yeah.
When you see it, I couldn't picture. When you see it on TV, you can't picture it. It's ridiculous. So on that opening ball, Glenn McGrath charges at you. When do you prepare for your shot? And is there times where you can hear the ball whizzing past you, and when you look back, can you believe how
times
far...
you can feel it? Not so much of Glenn McGrath, because he wasn't one of the quicker ones, but seemed quicker for some reason. He'd hit your bat hard. But like, say for instance, the first test at the Gabba.
Stark.
Right. You've got this pitch which is fast and bouncy. And you stand there, wicket goes down, you start walking out, you walk onto the pitch, and then as you walk in, you walk past the wicket-keeper very quickly. And then you get to your point, and then you stand in front of your wickets, and then you turn round, and they're so far away.
How far back, feet-wise?
What is it?
Metres.
Well, there's been times, there's a 30-yard circle in one-day cricket.
Yep.
And sometimes he's just stood inside that.
30 yards.
So people you can't picture, can you?
Such a great point. It's so striking.
But you get the Gabba's brilliant though to bat and bowl one, because it's fast and you can trust the bounce.
So you can feel it.
You get a bouncer and then you'll see it going past your ear. You just move your head out the way, and you can feel the wind of it going past.
No way.
As it goes, and you follow it round and see how far back it goes. Mate, it's brilliant. I promise you, it's amazing.
Really?
Amazing.
And so the person who that would be at its most potent would be Brett Lee. Fast, sharp,
Brett Lee.
Aggressive.
Yeah, but the nice thing about Brett Lee was, without getting boring, was he had such a nice bowling action that you never lost sight of the ball. Where it's these guys like a Wasim Akram who cover the ball, or someone's got a kink in their action. It makes it seem quicker almost.
And it would be more difficult to predict where the ball was going?
No, I think you get a sixth sense or something. You do know for some. I don't know how, because you get 0.4 of a second.
Yeah.
But the feeling, I promise you, you stand there.
It's interesting.
And then you're tapping I used to tap my bat on the floor.
Yeah.
And then I look up and I can see him setting off. And then you think, here he comes. And then as he gets closer...
Is your heart racing? No.
No, not really. And then as he gets closer and closer, then you lock on then. And then you're like, come on. And as it gets closer, and then he lets go, and then if it's a bouncer, and then you just move out of the way. And as that ball's going past your cheek, mate, the feeling is unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
Can I just ask you a bit on, you said the bounce, you could trust the bounce at the Gabba.
Yeah.
There are some grounds which are so uneven, the ball will deviate in a way that you can't possibly predict.
Yeah, the fast bouncy grounds are the ones which you love playing on. Like the Oval used to be. Old Trafford used to be, but then Old Trafford got a bit naughty because it'd get lower. It'd still keep its pace. So if you got a bouncer, you wasn't quite sure sometimes whether you went under it, out the way of it, or try and play it. And that's when you start getting into problems. Or you played on a pitch on the last day, which has crumbled and the cracks start appearing.
Right.
And I've played forward a couple of times to like full balls and been hit on the head. because it just bounces and hits you on the head.
So does a gabba crack the pitch?
It does, but it stays fine.
So if it hits a crack, so for the people who don't know about cricket...
Well, it could either shoot on the floor, it could veer up at your head, it could jag back and hit you in the nuts.
Really?
Yeah. But you're going to take all that out. You're going to take all that out. You just got to play the ball.
You mean you've got to get it out of your mind?
Don't worry about
Otherwise,
it. If it happens, it happens.
When a ball hits you on the head at pace, when you got the helmet on, how does it feel?
I've only ever been rocked once. I broke my nose and cheekbone in Pakistan, which went through the gap between my grill and my visor in the nets. Because you used to be able to change, I used to have it quite wide, and it went through and hit me. But then I got hit on the head against Monet Mokul at the Oval.
South African.
And I went to hook him and it hit me flush on the badge. And I got hit on the head a lot, to be fair, because I used to take it on and my helmet was good. But this one, rocked me. And he came down saying, "You're all right?" I said, "Yeah, I'm all right." Physio came on, and I was a little bit rocked. And then next ball...
When you say rocked, groggy?
Yeah, a bit groggy and a bit, all right, yeah. But then the next ball, just to save face, I decided, as he's running in, I'm just going to play a forward defensive shot. I don't care where he bowls it, I'm going to come at him. And the big soft lad bowled a full ball. And I played it, and I said to him, "Why have you done that? Why have you not tried to hit me on the head again? I just can't get my head round it."
He was doing it almost in sympathy.
Then he did it next ball, so I hooked him.
Wow, amazing.
But so the helmet provides protection, but it can really hurt. You broke your nose. I would have thought that fear must be part of the emotion when you're going in to face a fast bowler who could...
Fear is the emotion when you're watching. Because and it depends where you watch from. I grew up at Old Trafford on fast pitches, and the view from the side. So you're in the dressing room watching from the side, and you can't always see the ball that clearly from the side because it's quick.
Yep.
And then you see the ball going so far back, and you think, "Blimey, how quick's that? This is horrible."
Yeah.
I remember as a 15-year-old kid playing my first game in the senior team, bricking it before I got out there. And I got in the middle and he bowled it, and I thought, that's all right. What am I worried about?
Yeah.
So the fear, once you get out in the middle, you're fine.
The amazing thing about it is, because the ball is coming so fast, and I read a couple of papers on this, that most cricketers, high-level cricketers, have already decided whether to play off the front or the back foot before the ball has left the bowler's hand. So you're reading their body language.
Ball.
Yeah. And so what you were saying was really interesting, that some bowlers will come in and they're concealing the ball in their hand. You don't know where the seam is in relation to their fingers. The complexity of it is so...
When you think about
when you think about the variation of the pitches. You mentioned the Gabba fast. Just give us a quick summary of the pitches at the different grounds that they're going to play at.
Well, you've got the Gabba, which will be fast and bouncy.
Yep.
Historically, you win the toss, you have a bat. Try and score as many runs as you can. However, the pitch is probably at its best on second and third day. Then it starts, like all test pitches, to deteriorate a little bit. So second innings, batting last gets harder.
Right.
So that's why you bat first. You don't want to bat last.
The toss is massively important, the Gabba.
I think so.
You bat.
Yeah. You bat on everyone.
Really?
Unless there's something so wrong. The only toss I won in Australia was in Melbourne. And I was stood on the pitch the morning, and I said to Ian Botham, who was vocal and everything, I said, "What would you do?" He says, "I don't know." I said, "Cheers, Beefy." We won the toss, we had a bat, I think we bowled out for tea. Adelaide, day-night test match, bit different swing around in that twilight hours.
Yeah.
The pitch isn't particularly fast, it dies, it gets slower, it spins as the game goes on, so you're tempted to play two spinners. Lion for Australia will come into that one. Perth, I think, is on a new ground. So, who knows? Historically fast and bouncy. Melbourne's a drop-in pitch.
What's that mean?
So it's growing off the ground.
You're kidding.
And then it comes in on this massive caterpillar thing, and then they drop them in. The pitches at Melbourne, not necessarily that good.
Right.
Might seam around a little bit, no real pace. And then Sydney, that'll start off, bit of pace, it'll die, it'll spin a lot. It'll spin a lot as the game goes on.
Fascinating topic, that. Should we move on?
Just a quick one. England, Australia, who's winning? Thoughts, lads?
I'm with you. I think England will win 3-2. I'll go with that.
I'm going to go... I've got no idea. Listen to Fred. Fred says 3-2. I'm just going to go Australia.
Oh! The Welsh is coming out.
It's the England and Wales Cricket Board. I'm going to go Australia. I'm going to go Australia. I'm going to go...
I don't think there'll be any draws.
3-2 Australia.
Could happen.
Thank you for listening. You can download the podcast for extended versions of all the topics we covered this week at the 5 Live website and all the usual podcast places. Also, all the shows we've done to date are available to download there. Please use the hashtag FredSavSide to get in touch through the week. If you could leave a review on iTunes and give us a rating, that would be great. We'll be back next week at the same time. But for now, from all of us, goodbye.
Thanks, Matthew and the team. Make sure you get on that service, download those podcasts and leave them a review. Tonight with us then, a huge number of mobile phone thefts at gigs. You know, if you're in the mosh pit and you're bouncing up and down to your favourite band and your pockets are basically rich pickings for thieves at gigs. This has been especially prevalent at a Royal Blood gig, so we'll speak to Steve Holden from Newsbeat about that. We've got the head teacher tonight who has banned school reports. He said the language in them is pointless and no use to parents, and it's extra workload for his staff when they could be doing better stuff. So no more school reports at his school. He'll explain why. And we've got a 6'8" Harlem Globetrotter in the studio after 11 o'clock. His name is Moose, and there's a moose loose.
Start this week. Ball-by-ball commentary of each test over on 5 Live Sports Extra. This is BBC 5 Live.
Good evening, 10:30 on Monday night. It's Phil Williams here with you on 5 Live and the late news hour.
The main news on 5 Live, it's thought Theresa May's Brexit inner cabinet's agreed to increase the divorce offer.
And in sport, Newcastle receive a formal takeover offer.
This is BBC 5 Live.
With the latest BBC News on 5 Live, here's Kev McGrath.
Theresa May has been meeting senior ministers to discuss how much Britain's prepared to pay to leave the EU. But suggestions the UK could almost double its offer of £20 billion have been dismissed by Downing Street. The impeachment of Zimbabwe's President Mugabe will start tomorrow, according to the ruling ZANU-PF party. It follows his dismissal as leader and subsequent refusal to stand down. The party says he could be removed by Wednesday. Angela Merkel, the German Chancellor, says she'd prefer new elections to leading a minority government. Talks on forming a coalition have broken down after one of the two smaller parties she'd been negotiating with pulled out. And North Korea has been redesignated as a state sponsor of terrorism by the US. The announcement was made by President Trump. It means he'll be able to impose further sanctions and penalties on what he calls a murderous regime. That's 5 Live News. Shoja has the sport now.
A financial firm headed by British businesswoman Amanda Staveley has submitted a takeover bid for Newcastle United. A source close to the deal says PCP Capital Partners' offer is in the region of £300 million, although Newcastle say that figure is inaccurate. In the Premier League, Brighton came from behind twice to draw 2-2 at home with Stoke. Brighton stay 9th, Stoke stay 15th. Danny Rose is in contention to return to the Tottenham team for their Champions League match at Borussia Dortmund tomorrow. Manager Mauricio Pochettino says Rose will have a late fitness test. The former heavyweight world champion David Haye has pulled out of next month's scheduled rematch with the WBC cruiserweight world champion Tony Bellew. He suffered a bicep injury after falling while working out on the stairs. Bellew stopped Haye in the 11th round when they met in March. And tributes have been paid to the former Wimbledon champion Jana Novotná, who's died at the age of 49. Martina Navratilova described her as an amazing woman.
This is BBC 5 Live on digital, online, smartphone and tablet.
And the weather, outbreaks of rain moving in from the west overnight with heavy bursts in northern England, Northern Ireland and Scotland, and hail snow in the far north of Scotland. Lighter rain in the southern half of the UK, which should ease off later. Into Tuesday, and heavy rain for across Scotland. Cloudy, breezy and mild elsewhere with rain in places, and also some brighter spells in eastern, central and southern England.
So I'm just looking at the box office figures for Justice League. We'll talk about that in back row at 11:30. You know, the amalgamation of Wonder Woman and Batman and Superman, etc. on this film. And it's not done great, to be honest with you. The early figures we had were 94 million. Bear in mind it cost $300 million to make. I think they've now had some more up-to-date figures through, and they're saying that globally it's taken 185 million. On 46,000 screens in 65 different global markets. Anyway, what I'd like to know from you is if you've seen it over the weekend, because it was out Friday, did you nip out and see it? And were you pleasantly surprised? Was it good? Just want your Justice League review so that I can put those to our back row experts in an hour's time. 85058 for those, or at BBC 5 Live.
5 Live Breakfast.
On 5 Live Breakfast this morning, as Blue Planet 2 shows us the startling effect plastic is having on our oceans, we asked if the tide is turning on plastic.
What we do know from our studies and many other studies around the world is actually that there is a big problem with plastics in all wildlife, including marine mammals, and there's also a problem with some types of chemical pollutants. It's an absolutely global problem.
I decided to just go completely plastic free. There's so much good information online. What I would suggest is people look in their bins and their recycling bins, see what they're throwing away, and then try to get rid of that.
5 Live Breakfast. Back tomorrow from 6.
The Late News Hour
with Phil Williams on 5 Live.
Royal Blood there, who as we speak are probably just finishing another gig, this time at the Ali Pali in London. First of 3 consecutive nights at the venue for the band, who were nominated for the Mercury Music Prize back in 2014. This weekend just gone, they were playing in Birmingham. But some of those fans who attended had their mobile phones stolen in what seems to be an increasing trend at gigs that involve kind of mosh pits and pogoing up and down to your favourite band. Steve Holden